on my phone. Let's see how this works. Where do we get I think I was talking about seeing you grow as a leader. Even when I first met you, you were already in a leadership role.
Mhm.
And then you became VP of engineering at a
Yeah.
startup, and then you
Yeah.
joined LinkedIn. And at that time, I was thinking, like, what else is left?
Actually, it's funny. I kind of had the same feeling. So I felt like when
Yeah.
Accent, the journey was rough. I mean, honestly, a startup journey when you don't have a long runway and you have very little time to prove the product and take it to market. Like we were basically hustling, just putting in the work day in and day out, trying to get this product out, and so many challenges. We didn't have the right technology in place. We had a very archaic solution. We needed to redo everything from scratch, and time was against us, and so it was a very different set of constraints. Yeah, and I felt like I came out on the other end, helping the company through the acquisition journey, convincing the CEO, the board, and going through a lot of changes personally and professionally. I thought I was done, like coming out of that, and I felt like there was nothing new to learn. I was done. I had pretty much experienced everything that there is to experience. And I was very clear I didn't want to do another startup. So that's how
Yeah.
my journey, where it ended, where this the next phase of my professional life began. That's where it started. But I will tell you, looking back, what I've realized is being a leader at a large company, especially as part of a growth organization, is very much like a startup. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, there's also other skills that you need to learn and hone in order to be the
Yeah.
leader that a big company needs you to be. So there's a lot of people skills that I needed to also sharpen along the
Yeah.
way. So yeah, it's been very rewarding. I'm still learning, and there's so much more ground to cover. So it's exciting.
Tell us about the PM and engineering relationship. Why why does this matter? And is there a difference between a Eng and PM relationship in a startup versus in a big company like LinkedIn?
Yeah, like the way I've always, so, I started my journey as an engineer, like most people do, especially in tech. And so my relationship with PM has changed over the years because my role has changed. The way I have interacted with products has changed.
Hmm.
So, but the one thing that I will tell you has always been a constant, which I'd love to leave with anybody who's listening, is if you're an engineer, or as whether you're working in IC capacity or whether you're a leader in a different role that needs to interact with product, I think it is always important to understand that defining a product isn't just product's job. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, you're the one that's giving it life, and you don't want to do it in a way that you're just simply translating a spec or a story into something that lives and breathes. Instead, think of it as a joint relationship. So it doesn't matter, right? Like even as an engineer, you can have an opinion, you can have a perspective, you can have a point of view
Right.
on how this experience comes to life. Like, is this the right way to build the feature, right? Like these are things that you can always do, and I always used to. I was al- it, you can you know I was always curious. I would ask a lot of these curiosity questions to my product. But what if this? What if the user does that? Or what if the user does not do this? So I think it's very important to start developing. Uh, I wouldn't call it product skills, but think of it as feeling and experiencing the product from the customer or member point of view, and I think we can
Yeah.
all do that.
Yeah.
So in today's age, we work with so many different apps, we interact with so many different applications, we do have an opinion. So the question is, how do we use that voice effectively to help shape that product? And as you grow, obviously, you're not just shaping that one feature, one button, you're also looking at the bigger picture. You learn to understand the larger ecosystem, what drives the business, and then you start connecting the dots a little bit together. So that's the way I view the product engineering relationship is
Mhm.
you both have skills, You both have unique skills,
Right.
but at the same time, you have a common goal. So, how do you achieve that common goal? How do you leverage each other's strengths? How do you challenge each other, but in a healthy, leading with curiosity kind of way, and not shy away from disagreeing, because that's honestly the best way to get to a good solution.
What happens if relationship is not good? The relationship between PM and engineering.
So for me, first, in order to understand that, first you need to define good and what's not good, right?
Mm.
Like it's all perception. I think good means that you are able to connect with this person authentically. You are able to share your opinions freely.
Yeah.
You are able to not just be yourself, not having to prepare for these meetings. You just want to be able to show up and share your thoughts without the
Mm.
fear of being judged, or without the fear of being pushed back. So I think that to me is like the first step. And if you
Mm.
have that, then you can build on that. I think when I obviously the opposite of that is defines what's not good, which is when you're not able to show up authentically, when you're not able to have these open conversations, when you're not able to challenge your partners. Then I think that you get into the zone where you are starting to possibly either deliver subpar experiences to your members, which means you're not thinking like member first or customer first, or even in the scenario where it's the right experience but you're not fully sold on it, you as a person is not going to give your best. So
Right.
somebody is getting shortchanged in this process, which is not really good. So I think the best way to think about it is, how can I have these conversations? And it's not something that you can easily do. We all connect on the common aspect of, hey, we need to build this common goal, but
Hmm.
there's also a person behind the role that we assume, right?
Yeah.
And how do you tap into that person? How do you get to know this person? How do you develop that relationship? And I think everything is important, everything builds up from there.
Right. And this leads me to the second question, which is how do you strengthen this relationship if, let's say, you either had a rocky start, or maybe in my case, I was a very junior PM and you're very senior. How does that relationship work?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different things when you're working with. So a, you can naturally help them. Like you start with someone's junior, as in, hey, they're new in the role, they're learning.
Hmm.
Then there is you can certainly help provide guidance, right? They need some kind of guidance. Maybe I think when you and I worked together, Nancy, the one thing that I still remember, I absolutely loved that, and I've taken it like to heart. There's many things, but this one I've consciously tried to imbibe a little bit more, which is when you have a lot of fundamental disagreement, or like if you're not sure, or it's something big, you're going for like a big change, you're like dreaming big. It's always good to seek alignment. In an individual setting, it's good to get stakeholder feedback, hear their thoughts, and then when you try to get in a group setting, in a team setting, it makes these conversations a lot easier.
Hmm.
So I know you were in the junior PM capacity, and I was already a leader, but I
Yeah.
just love that about you. So the point is, it's not about there's no seniority when it comes to relationships, where
Mm-hmm.
you bring a lot of skills to the table that I don't have, and I have a lot of skills that you may not have. So it's, for me, it's more of a give and take, and you look at it as an equal partnership
Hmm.
and see how we help each other. So I think, to me, that's how you build trust. When we genuinely see what you need, it could be mentoring, it could be maybe trying to get alignment from the leadership team on the engineering side that I could potentially help you
Right.
with. And similarly, we could do something that maybe I have a hard time getting behind the design, and maybe that's where you can help us figure out what's the best way to design an experience. So I think it's more about understanding each other's needs, and figuring out what I can do, or what you can do to help support each other.
What what would a not so great PM look like from the engineering leader's perspective?
Not so great PM. I don't know. From an engineering perspective, like, first of all, look, at the end of the day, there's only one definition of not so great anything. When there is impact from the work, if we have not materially impacted the members or the customers that we are providing the service to, then I feel like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how great these ideas are. If they don't land, they don't land. And so that's an easy one, right? We're all measured by the same barometer of success.
Yeah.
I think beyond that, from a pure relationship standpoint, the one thing that I like with the principles that we use within engineering at LinkedIn is focusing a lot more on the what and the why, and then separating the how and the
Mhm.
when from all of that. So I think the what and the why needs to be a joint mission. Like everybody needs to understand it. Product and engineering needs to be completely aligned on the what and the why. And I truly believe that product has a big responsibility in defining the what and the why, right? But I think when it comes to how and the when, I
Yeah.
think that's where the trust aspects come in. So engineering knows what's the best way to do something, and
Right.
because you have to balance for scale, you have to balance for future proofing something. It's not always about like taking the shortest path to go from point A to point B. It's
Yeah.
also about making sure we can iterate periodically, continuously. So for me, a not so good PM would be somebody who tries to always optimize for short term goals and
Mhm.
not having that long term vision or like picture in mind. Because at the end of the day, you've got to be strategic. You've got to think about where I need this to be a year or 2 or 3 years down the line. And when you don't have that vision, when you don't have that clarity or a strategy that helps the team move forward, to me, I feel like that's doing a huge disservice to the team, to the company, and everything else that you are responsible for.
What's the best way to communicate the 2 year plan or 3 year plan to engineering when engineering is so heads down focused on the next big release?
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, look, I think I'm not trying to. It does. I don't know if there is a magic answer. Oh, every 3 months we should do a strategy review, or every 6 months. But the
Hmm.
one thing that I've learned from my my startup days is that we live and we develop software in a very very fast paced manner. So I don't know what anything is going to look like 2 or 3 years down the line. Nobody can predict that, and things change. It's very fluid, extremely volatile. But I think what we can do is think of it as like having a maybe like a 6 month outlook and a 3 month refresh, something like
Mhm.
that. Or if you're a super big company, maybe you can do like a 1 year outlook and a 6 month refresh.
Right.
All of those things make sense depending on the pace at which we are operating, how quickly you're able to iterate, pivot, move, and how and the appetite for those changes, right? Not everybody is able to very quickly pivot and change and drop, stop,
Right.
all of that. So all of that will depend on the company and the culture largely, but having some kind of an outlook so you know where you're headed and being able to refresh it at periodic intervals. And of course, you could also tie your communication strategy to those um, uh, uh, cycles, planning cycles, or whatever you do.
You said that PMs should let engineering drive the how and the when. What does that look like in a more tactical way? Is it that PMs should not be questioning why is this taking so long and things like that? Look, what are the things that PMs should not be doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is something that we all deal with on a daily basis. No, I don't think it's a question of you shouldn't. It's not about questioning or not questioning something. I think to me, it's more about understanding it. I think you need PMs could work with the engineering partners to lead with curiosity and understand what is genuinely taking longer, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to making it look like you're just trying to poke or like double click into areas that might not be the best. I think what are we really trying to achieve, right? Like you want to expedite whatever could possibly and you can't say let's do everything as fast as we can. That's
Yeah.
also doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So figure out what are the things that are absolutely non-negotiable from a timeline standpoint, and see how we can ensure that those things are very well funded and we are making the right decisions to make it um, go as fast as possible. But
Mm-hmm.
if you try to kind of poke into every aspect of like what the engineering is, that's basically counterproductive, and
Mm,
that also erodes trust, right? Like, because you need to leave that to subject matter experts, and this is where the trust comes in,
right.
because it's not scalable. If you get down to the level of what is this engineer doing this week, that's not really a very productive discussion to
Right.
have.
Right.
So yeah.
How how does PM and Eng work together on a brand new 0 to 1 initiative? Because there's going to be
Yeah.
discovery work up front. What is engineering's role in that type of initiative?
Yeah, for this, I'm definitely have to go back to my startup experience, because this is exactly what we had to do. I think there's multiple things. It's actually the most exciting phase, if you ask me. Like, it's every engineer's dream, or I'm sure even product, to create something from scratch, something that doesn't
Mm,
exist. So I think during the discovery phase, uh, at least for the specific product that we built at the startup, we spent a lot of time working with the outbound PM team. Different companies call them like BizOps. There's folks, there's PMM. Like, large companies have different ways to collect market research data, understand what's really going on the ground. So how, essentially getting a landscape of the entire market.
yeah,
So we did that. A lot of that was done by, mostly driven by product, but from an engineering standpoint, for me at the time, it was a lot of learning. Like, I'd never done anything like that before. So some of it was also shadowing somebody in that role. And we were talking to customers. I would just shadow them in these roles to just understand. So sometimes it's more about just seeking to understand, just kind of learning and shadowing and all of that. But I think in that process, what I think is very important for an engineering leader or engineering manager to do is to hear all these things, process all these things, and
hmm,
figure out how you can translate to the best possible technology,
yeah.
solution, and architecture that can help you develop this product in the best way possible and as quickly as possible. So, and that's exactly what we did. And back then it was about, do we want to do this, build this backup software or using the appliance model, or do we want to directly leapfrog and go to the cloud? You remember
I
that?
remember that. Yes,
Remember that? And so I we were basically saying, hey, we should go directly to the cloud, and we are talking like 8 9 years ago, and public cloud infrastructure was not
that's
quite ready for the kind of scale that we were looking for. And it was a big, I don't know, it was like, hey, you just have to take a leap of faith here and bet on something, the
yes,
future of something. And there were so many risks that came along with it,
right.
and the rest is history, obviously. But yeah, that's the way I've always, because that's your skill, that's what you've spent all your time, years, learning and getting better at. So take your skills, see what you're really good at, and then figure out the understand the what, and see how you can blend the two to build the best world class product that you possibly can.
I love that. We have a question from the audience. Let me bring it up on the screen. You mentioned that engineering teams determine the how and when of product. How do you strike a balance between accelerating time to market and ensuring the highest quality of the product? Great question, right?
Yeah, great question. Great question. There is no magic answer. I wish there was a magic, like, here is what you do and this works. I think a lot of it really depends on how much leeway you have in terms of time to market. Like, for us, being able to, again, I'm going back to my startup days, being able to deliver a product, take it to market within 12 to 18 months, and having 20 paying customers on it was like a huge undertaking. And for the scale at which we were operating, the kind of product and the technical complexity, that was tall order. Like, that was a lot. But again, in a large company, that could look very different. But at the end of the day, there is always, whatever the estimates are, we always want to do it sooner, quicker. How can we do more with less time, less resources? So that's a real problem. Ensuring highest quality of product and balancing time to market. Look, it's a delicate game. A lot of times, engineering has the tendency to build for like eternal scale, as in, hey, it needs to scale 20 years from now. Do we though, really? Like, so when do you really invest in platforms? When do you even decide that you want to make it a platform or make it something that's largely scalable? to being able to possibly cutting corners is a wrong, is probably not the right words here, but we're trying to find the balance between the two. So for me, the philosophy that I've always used is how quickly can we prototype something. See, when you build a proof of concept or a prototype, you have a little bit of wiggle room, right? You can be scrappy, you can possibly come up with some solutions. Keep in mind that you're not scaling that prototype, right? Like you're never going to take a prototype to market, but it helps you very quickly validate your ideas. And that is valuable, especially when you're building a product. You need to get it out in front of customers and members as quickly as possible, because that's real feedback. Once you get that feedback, then I think we can totally figure out, depending on what the scale pattern, scale requirements are, you can totally figure out what's the best way to scale it. But that's how it's always served me well, and that's what I live and breathe every single day. And I would say that's the balance. Figure out how you can quickly deliver the first version, get feedback, and then make the decision to either invest or
Yeah.
how much to invest.
Yeah. Tell us about what you mean by captain of the ship.
Look, I this is my perspective. I do think, and I love the way agile and scrum works in general. At the end of the day, remember we spoke about product and engineering have an equal role in
Mm.
sharing that vision and the long term goal. Absolutely true. You need to be totally bought in. You need to believe, have conviction in what you're building. But you can't have two people who are responsible for the same outcome. What I mean is, from an accountability standpoint,
Yeah.
there's different parts of it that you could be accountable for, but at the end of the day, there has to be a single DRI,
Yeah.
just to make sure that there is no confusion between roles and responsibilities. So for me, I always believe that product is that captain of the ship. Again, assuming that we both aligned on, okay, we've set course, we know where we are headed. You need to be aligned on that. But once you do that, exactly what route to take, how you take it, over what period of time, those things, I would definitely look to the product to give me some guidance, and then we would then start to figure out what that means. So that's the way I look at it. That's, I think, from an agile standpoint, I think product owner is real. There's a reason why we call them product owners.
I reported into engineering leader at one point when I was at Meta, and she said engineering is captain of the ship, and PM is the navigator. What does being captain of the ship mean? So we had this conversation because I saw myself as captain of the ship, and the context was when the ship hits something, hits
Yes.
iceberg, captain goes down with the ship. And then she said, "Actually, you're the navigator. You're not the captain of the ship." I was like, "Oh, what does
Yeah.
that mean?"
Yeah, it's accountability. That's what I was alluding to earlier, right? At the end of the day, accountability, the buck has to stop at some level.
Yeah.
Um, but again, every company has a slightly different take on it. And again, the what accountability means and how you implement that can also look very different. I mean, I
Mhm.
don't know if we need to be as graphic as going down with the ship here. But the point is, so like, look, a failure is a failure. It doesn't really matter if it's whether your product or engineering. We're gonna probably feel it the same way,
Yeah.
because remember I said, like, ultimately it's the impact, and it's, but again, but skills are different. If you have to really go in front of a customer and defend why, I would say that's something that a product needs to start owning.
Right.
Of course, engineering can support, but there are some boundaries that we need to draw, because otherwise the roles will just become blur, and we can't do each other's job. So that there is that delineation. But beyond that, I feel like we own the outcomes. We need to believe in where we are headed. But beyond that, the decisions, I think, the hard decisions will have to be made by one person. Like, and
Yeah.
you have to trust that these are the right decisions.
Yeah.
Same way I would make a technology choice that you would have to trust.
Or I could ask you a million questions.
That
At
we
the
both
end,
need to do
yeah.
regardless. But
Yeah.
that is to understand. but not to override or
Yeah.
not to think that you can just tell me, like,
What to do. Right.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in that case, PM is not the captain of the ship because we can't tell you what to do.
No, no.
Yeah.
I think that's where you should trust that I know how to do
Yeah.
my job well and what technology to use.
Right.
And otherwise, like I said, the jobs and the lines are blurry, and then there is no
Yeah.
accountability at all whatsoever.
Makes sense. I have a next question for you, which is, as an engineering leader, what can you do and what can't you do?
Wow, that's an interesting question. What can I do? I think we've covered it quite
Yeah.
well. I think you jointly own the outcome, you own the vision. Your job is to translate the vision and passion and inspire the team so they all understand the why behind it. And they are able to ultimately feel it the same way that you feel it. And I truly believe that's what, if as an engineering leader, if you can somehow inspire the team and ensure that they share the same passion and enthusiasm that you're feeling for the product or the feature that you're building, then your job is largely done. And So I think that's what an engineering lead should do, is to take that vision and make sure that every single engineer understands the why behind it. What can't you do? um, I don't know. Actually, I think that I can do anything I want to. You want me to build a product? I'm sure I can. This is where I think I'm probably going to go back to anyway. But jokes aside, a lot of it in the context of the job that you're presently doing. Again, this goes back to roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
Can I set the vision? Surely I can do that. Can I look at the data and understand what feature we should be building? You got it. Absolutely, we can do it. But does it mean I am the best person when it comes to talking to all these cross functional partners and ensuring that we have a good quality experience? Probably not. I don't have this. I don't have a ton of experience doing that.
I would say even if you do have the experience or even if you want to be getting alignment, you don't have time
Yeah, that's
to
the
do
other.
everything.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why sometimes in a larger space where there's a lot of ambiguity, you definitely need a product person and an engineer.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah,
if the space is contained and it's not ambiguous, one person could do both jobs.
exactly. That's why I said in a startup world, that can look very different. If I
Yeah.
want to become an entrepreneur someday, I'm probably going to build a product on my own. It doesn't mean that we don't have the skills or you can't have the skills. It means that you may not have the time or you may not be the best at it.
Mm.
So yeah.
This leads me to the next question, which is, how do you ensure the effectiveness of the cross functional team? I know largely the PM does this and it's the PM's job.
Yes.
What is engineering's role in this?
That is a very interesting question. So for me, let's talk about effectiveness of a cross-functional team.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the effectiveness of any team is measured by the outcome, right? Like whatever the success is for this ship, or like the crew that's on the ship, is getting to that destination on time. So if you're able to do that
And safely.
and safely, yes, yes, no bodies on the ground, yeah, exactly, we've reached our destination on time, with good quality. Yes, so that to me is success, and that means that everybody has a job and they've done it well, right? And so that's how I would measure effectiveness of a cross functional team. um, More importantly, what's the role of engineering given that product does most of these things? I mean, for me, it's always been that, for me, I've seen myself as I will step in where product is not able to. I will step in and take on that role if for some reason product has other priorities, or so that's the way I've always seen myself, and that's how I would ensure. Again, given that we both share the same vision,
Yeah.
even though it may not be our full time job, I think the ability to step in and fill those shoes when needed. Same thing. I would actually ask my product partner to do the same thing for me.
Right.
I need that extra help. So yeah, so that's the way I look at it.
I remember very clearly when we were working together. at the startup, we had one of these either monthly or weekly meetings, and we needed to present what we were up
Yeah.
to the rest of the company, rest of the engineering organization. And I took it upon myself to update the slide on our priorities um, for that month or something like that.
Mm.
You made a comment because you didn't know that I was going to do it. And then you said that you woke up early just to update the slide. And then you saw that I updated it already. That was, and that moment was when I felt we have a relationship. Like I didn't think that it was your job to update the slide. I just did it. I felt like that was something I needed to do. And as a result of that, I felt that we grew closer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's just one tiny thing that either the PM can do or the engineering leader could do. And slowly it builds up over time. And that's how the relationship gets stronger over time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even now at LinkedIn, with all the product partners that I have, we work the exact same way. And yeah, so she, like I have many of them, just ping me and say, "Hey, what can I do to help? How can I, you know?" And that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. What advice do you have for PMs um, who are trying to grow in their careers? So these are mid-level to senior level PMs who might have quote unquote difficult engineering partners. What can they do to strengthen this relationship?
Um, there are many traits that an engineering leader can have that can be perceived as difficult for a product. I think one thing could be that you want to overly index on scaling or platformizing a component, or focusing a little bit more on the craft side of things. Again, like I said, these are perspectives, just hard to so I think it's very important for the PM to understand what is the difficulty first. First step is be aware of that and identify where that's coming from. Is it because the engineering team is generally not able to deliver on time? Is it because they don't have the right talent pool in place? Is it because there is a morale issue, a lot of attrition? So I think it's important to understand where these issues are stemming from first, right? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is to once you have a good grasp of what the problems are, then to figure out who to talk to who can actually address these issues. A lot
Mm,
of times what I've realized is an engineering team might not be delivering, that there might be challenges beyond what the EM can control possibly.
right.
So figuring out at what level to have these conversations, I think that's the next. Again, you said junior or like mid level, right? So they may not really know how to navigate the situation. And I think once you have these conversations, oftentimes it usually results in a reasonable outcome. Then third thing is patience. Nothing is going Rome wasn't built in a day. Nothing's going
Right.
to take like overnight. We cannot fix these problems. Again, a lot of it depends on where these issues are coming from. And also sometimes I've also realized it could also be that knowingly or unknowingly there could be issues on the product side as well. So from my experience, what I've learned is that engineering also feels like sometimes there could be multiple product priorities coming from,
True.
yeah,
True.
especially for a large company. Everybody has perspectives. Sometimes you might hear right from the very top. Sometimes it could be from your boss, somebody from like another manager here. So how do you synthesize all of that's where a product's
Yeah.
job is really important, to make sure you prioritize and not let all of these just come through, and to kind of have some filtering mechanisms. So I think that's important. So one, figure out where the problems are coming from. Two, figure out who to have the conversation with. And largely just be patient and work on figuring out if there's anything you can do to alleviate or like fix some of these challenges.
I love that. One of my learning moments at Meta was a lot of people had different opinions. One PM lead wanted us. my PM lead wanted us to work on X, and my skip wanted us to work on a different thing. And
Mm,
so when the request or the desire is in different things,
mm,
this is dangerous for engineering
yes,
because it puts engineering in a difficult position. You can't do everything.
right.
So which one do we do? When there is no alignment on the PM side, engineering is on hold. And that's
Yes,
the worst thing,
yes,
to have engineering sit idle and do nothing.
yeah.
In that moment, it was my job to close the loop, to get alignment. But a lot of things happened, and I wasn't able to close the loop in the shortest amount of time.
Mm,
It took me longer than what people would have liked. As a result, that was seen as a miss.
mm,
So it's not just that PMs need to close the loop. It's not just that PMs need to get alignment. It's also the timeliness.
yes.
That's the PM's job. Because sure, I can probably close the loop in a week, but what is engineering doing this entire week? They're waiting for
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think staying ahead. I think I always, so this, we go back to this captain analogy. I think being able, product needs to stay ahead, if you ask me, ahead of the curve, ahead of engineering. So to be able to, if we are talking about building relationships, product and engineering, product needs to build relationship with like every stakeholder, every leader that's out there, understand their teams, their strategy, figure out how this fits, and so you can possibly avoid these conflicts and escalations
Yeah.
down the line. So I think that's a very, it's a hefty job. It's a big job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me and coming onto my live stream.
of course,
It's
Nan.
your first live stream,
For
right?
you.
Let me point people to your LinkedIn. Scan the QR code to connect with Anu. I've known her for years and years and years, and she would be someone that I would really love to work with again in a PM and engineering capacity or in some other capacity.
100%. And me too.
All right. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you again on my channel.
Bye, Nancy. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.